Today I'm going to tell you about 25-year-old Maryam's story from Gaza, Palestine. She lost her sight when she was just 12 years old, but what she couldn't see with her eyes, she learned to accomplish with her heart. When her parents died in an accident, Maryam became responsible for her 3 younger siblings. How does a blind young woman provide for her family in one of the world's most challenging places? And what miracle did she create that amazed everyone who knew her? Imagine losing your sight as a child, then losing your parents as a young adult, and suddenly becoming the sole provider for 3 children who depend on you for everything. I know this might seem impossible to overcome, but imagine if this were your own sister facing such overwhelming challenges. Before we continue, please subscribe to our channel so we can keep sharing these important stories from Palestine. How did Maryam support her siblings without being able to see? And what extraordinary skill did she develop that changed their lives? Stay with me until the end to find out. 25-year-old Maryam Abdullah had been blind for 13 years, ever since a piece of shrapnel from an explosion near her school damaged her optic nerves when she was 12. The doctors at Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza had done everything they could, but the damage was irreversible. Your daughter will need to learn to navigate the world in a new way, Dr. Khalil had told her parents gently. But blindness doesn't mean the end of possibilities. Maryam's parents, Fatima and Ibrahim, had been devastated by their daughter's condition, but they quickly became her strongest advocates. Instead of treating her like she was helpless, they encouraged her independence and creativity. Her father, who worked as a carpenter, taught her to identify different types of wood by touch and smell. Her mother, a seamstress, helped her develop an extraordinary sense of texture and fabric quality through her fingertips. Despite her blindness, Maryam had completed her high school education with the help of teachers who transcribed lessons into Braille and classmates who became her eyes during lectures. She had always been exceptionally bright, and losing her sight seemed to sharpen her other abilities. Her memory became photographic, her hearing incredibly acute, and her sense of touch so refined that she could identify objects and textures that sighted people would miss. The family lived in a small 3-room house in the Jabalia refugee camp, along with Maryam's 3 younger siblings, 20-year-old Ahmed, who was studying to become a teacher, 17-year-old Layla, a talented student who dreamed of becoming a nurse, and 14-year-old Youssef, who was brilliant at mathematics and wanted to be an engineer. Maryam had found her own path to contribute to the family's income even before the tragedy that would change everything. She had taught herself to create the most beautiful embroidery work in the entire neighborhood, using only her sense of touch to guide her needle. Her fingers could detect the slightest variation in thread thickness, and she could create intricate patterns that were more precise than the work of many sighted seamstresses. If this story is touching your heart so far, please give it a like. Can you imagine if your own family faced such challenges and had to depend on someone who couldn't see to guide them through life? Let's continue with Maryam's incredible journey of determination and love. For years, the family had lived a modest but stable life. Ibrahim's carpentry work and Fatima's sewing, combined with Maryam's embroidery income, provided enough for the children's education and basic needs. But on a terrible day in March, everything changed when Ibrahim and Fatima were killed in a car accident while traveling to deliver furniture to a customer in Gaza City. In one devastating moment, 25-year-old Maryam became the head of household for 3 grieving siblings who were still pursuing their educations. Ahmed was in his 2nd year of university, Layla was in her final year of high school, and Youssef was just beginning his high school studies. The night after their parents' funeral, the 4 siblings sat together in their small living room, trying to figure out how they would survive. Ahmed, though he was only 20, felt the weight of being the oldest male in the family. "I'll quit university and find full-time work," he announced. "Layla and Youssef will have to stop school too. We all need to work now." But Maryam, despite her blindness and her own grief, immediately rejected this plan. "No," she said firmly. "Mama and Baba sacrificed everything for your educations. I won't let their dreams die with them. We will find another way." "But Maryam," Layla said through her tears, "how can we possibly manage? You can't work enough to support all of us and pay for our schooling." Maryam was quiet for a long moment, her fingers absently tracing the embroidery pattern she had been working on when the police came to deliver the news about their parents. Suddenly, she had an idea that would seem impossible to most people but felt completely logical to her. "I'm going to expand my embroidery business," she announced. "But not just for individual customers. I'm going to create enough pieces to supply stores throughout Gaza and maybe even export to other countries." Her siblings looked at her with a mixture of love and concern. How could a blind woman possibly manage a large-scale business operation? But Maryam had already begun formulating a plan. "Ahmed, you'll continue your studies, but in your free time, you'll help me with deliveries and meeting customers. Layla, you're artistic, I will help me design new patterns. Youssef, your math skills will help me manage the business finances. We'll work together as a team. Over the next few weeks, Maryam transformed their small home into a production center. She had always worked alone before, but now she realized she needed to think bigger. She began teaching her siblings the embroidery techniques she had perfected, guiding their hands with her own until they could create work that met her exacting standards. The most remarkable thing was watching Maryam work. Her fingers moved across fabric with a speed and precision that seemed almost supernatural. She could detect the slightest flaw in a thread, the smallest irregularity in a pattern, or the most minute variation in fabric texture. What would take a sighted person an hour to embroider, Maryam could complete in 30 minutes, and her work was invariably perfect. When will people with disabilities be seen for their abilities rather than their limitations? When will societies create opportunities that allow people like Maryam to use their unique skills to support themselves and their families? Every person, regardless of physical challenges, has gifts that can contribute to their community's well-being. Within 3 months of their parents' death, Maryam's business had grown beyond anything she had imagined. Word of her extraordinary embroidery skills had spread throughout Gaza, and she was receiving orders faster than she and her siblings could complete them. Store owners in Gaza City were competing to feature her work, and she had even received inquiries from buyers in Jordan and Lebanon. But managing a growing business while being blind presented unique challenges. Maryam had to develop systems that allowed her to keep track of orders, inventory, and finances without being able to see written records. She created a tactile filing system using different textures and shapes to represent different customers and order types. She taught herself to use an abacus for financial calculations and developed a method of organizing threads and fabrics that allowed her to locate any material instantly by touch. Her siblings marveled at her organizational abilities. Maryam always knows exactly where everything is, Layla would tell visitors to their workshop. She can find a specific color thread in our storage room faster than any of us can with our eyes. The business grew so successful that Maryam was able to hire 2 other women from the neighborhood who needed income. She taught them her techniques and quality standards, always working alongside them to ensure that every piece met her expectations. Ahmed was able to continue his university studies and was excelling in his teacher training program. Layla graduated from high school with honors and was accepted into nursing school. Youssef was maintaining excellent grades while also contributing significantly to the business's financial management. But perhaps most importantly, Maryam had discovered that her blindness, rather than being a limitation, had given her abilities that others didn't possess. Her sense of touch was so refined that she could detect quality differences in materials that even suppliers couldn't identify. Her listening skills were so acute that she could understand her customers' needs and preferences better than many sighted business owners. 6 months after starting her expanded business, Maryam received a visit that would change everything. Dr. Amal Nazir, a Palestinian-American entrepreneur who had returned to Gaza to identify promising small businesses for investment, had heard about the remarkable blind woman who was running one of the most successful embroidery operations in the region. "I've seen your work," Dr. Amal told Maryam during their meeting in the family's workshop. "The quality is extraordinary, but what impresses me most is how you've built this business and supported your family under such challenging circumstances." Dr. Amal offered to help Maryam expand her business internationally through her network of contacts in Europe and North America. "Traditional Palestinian embroidery has a market worldwide," she explained. "But it needs to be presented properly and marketed to the right customers." The partnership with Dr. Amal opened doors that Maryam had never imagined. Within a year, her embroidery pieces were being sold in boutiques in London, Paris, and New York. The business that had started as a desperate attempt to keep her family together had become a successful international enterprise. Today, 3 years after their parents' death, all 4 siblings have achieved remarkable success. Ahmed graduated from university and is now teaching at a local school while continuing to help manage the business. Layla is in her 2nd year of nursing school and works part-time in the family business. Youssef is excelling in his final year of high school and has already been accepted to study engineering at university. Maryam's embroidery business now employs 15 women from their neighborhood and has become a model for how traditional Palestinian crafts can be preserved and marketed globally. She has been featured in international magazines and has spoken at conferences about entrepreneurship and disability rights. But perhaps most remarkably, Maryam has also used her success to help other families in similar situations. She has established a training program that teaches embroidery skills to women who need income, and she provides interest-free loans to help other small businesses get started. "Losing my sight taught me to see things differently," Maryam often tells the women she mentors. "And losing my parents taught me that love doesn't die with death, it transforms into action." Everything I do for my siblings and my community is a way of keeping my parents' love alive. The local community has come to see Maryam not as a disabled woman who overcame challenges, but as a successful businesswoman who happens to be blind. Children in the neighborhood line up to watch her work, amazed by the speed and precision of her fingers as they create beautiful patterns without needing to see them. When will the world recognize that disability does not mean inability? When will societies focus on creating opportunities that allow people with different abilities to contribute their unique skills? Maryam's story shows us that limitations often exist more in our assumptions than in reality. If you believe that people with disabilities deserve recognition for their abilities rather than sympathy for their challenges, if you believe that families should be supported in staying together and pursuing their dreams, please like this video so this story of triumph and determination can reach more people. Right now, thousands of people are watching this story. Let's make sure Maryam's message of possibility and perseverance reaches every corner of the world. Can you imagine if your own family had to depend on a blind family member to provide for everyone's future? Can you imagine if someone you loved had to prove every day that their disability didn't define their capabilities? Think about the assumptions people make about what disabled individuals can and cannot accomplish. Every like, every comment shows that families like Maryam's and entrepreneurs overcoming physical challenges are not forgotten. If you believe that talent and determination matter more than physical limitations, leave a Palestinian flag emoji in the comments. Subscribe to our channel to show that you stand with business owners who create opportunities for their communities and families who refuse to let tragedy defeat their dreams. Tomorrow we'll bring you another story that will remind you of the incredible achievements possible when people are given the chance to show what they can do rather than being defined by what they cannot. Don't miss it. Subscribe so we can continue sharing these important stories of ability, entrepreneurship, and the power of family love. Will you share a prayer for entrepreneurs like Maryam and all the families working together to overcome challenges in the comments? They need our recognition, our support, and our commitment to creating inclusive opportunities for people of all abilities. Show your reaction, let them know that their achievements matter, and that the world believes in the power of determination over limitation. Note, the names mentioned in this story have been changed for privacy purposes. This story is inspired by real events experienced by entrepreneurs with disabilities and families supporting each other through business ventures in Palestine.